What starts here changes the world. I have a few suggestions that may help you on your way to a better world. And while these lessons were learned during my time in the military, I can assure you that it matters not whether you ever served a day in uniform. It matters not your gender, your ethnic or religious background, your orientation, or your social status. Our struggles in this world are similar, and the lessons to overcome those struggles and to move forward, changing ourselves and changing the world around us, will apply equally to all. So here are the 10 lessons I learned from basic SEAL training that hopefully will be of value to you as you move forward in life. Every morning in SEAL training, my instructors, who at the time were all Vietnam veterans, would show up in my barracks room, and the first thing they'd do was inspect my bed. If you did it right, the corners would be square, the covers would be pulled tight, the pillow centered just under the headboard, and the extra blanket folded neatly at the foot of the rack. It was a simple task, mundane at best, but every morning we were required to make our bed to perfection. It seemed a little ridiculous at the time, particularly in light of the fact that we were aspiring to be real warriors, tough, battle-hardened SEALs. But the wisdom of this simple act has been proven to me many times over. If you make your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a small sense of pride, and it will encourage you to do another task, and another, and another. And by the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that the little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you'll never be able to do the big things right. And if by chance you have a miserable day, you will come home to a bed that is made, that you made. And a made bed gives you encouragement that tomorrow will be better. So if you want to change the world, start off by making your bed. During SEAL training, the students are all broken down into boat crews. Each crew is 7 students, 3 on each side of a small rubber boat, and 1 coxswain to help guide the dinghy. Every day your boat crew forms up on the beach and is instructed to get through the surf zone and paddle several miles down the coast. In the winter, the surf off San Diego can get to be 8 to 10 feet high, and it is exceedingly difficult to paddle through the plunging surf unless everyone digs in. Every paddle must be synchronized to the stroke count of the coxswain. Everyone must exert equal effort, or the boat will turn against the wave and be unceremoniously dumped back on the beach. For the boat to make it to its destination, everyone must paddle. You can't change the world alone. You will need some help. And to truly get from your starting point to your destination takes friends, colleagues, the goodwill of strangers, and a strong coxswain to guide you. If you want to change the world, find someone to help you paddle. Over a few weeks of difficult training, my SEAL class, which started with 150 men, was down to just 42. There were now 6 boat crews of 7 men each. I was in the boat with the tall guys, but the best boat crew we had was made up of the little guys, the Munchkin crew, we called them. No one was over 5'5". The Munchkin boat crew had 1 American Indian, 1 African American, 1 Polish American, 1 Greek American, 1 Italian American, and 2 tough kids from the Midwest. They out-paddled, outran, and outswam all the other boat crews. The big men in the other boat crews would always make good-natured fun of the tiny little flippers the Munchkins put on their tiny little feet prior to every swim. But somehow these little guys from every corner of the nation and the world always had the last laugh, swimming faster than everyone and reaching the shore long before the rest of us. SEAL training was a great equalizer. Nothing mattered but your will to succeed, not your color, not your ethnic background, not your education, not your social status. If you want to change the world, measure a person by the size of their heart, not by the size of their flippers.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Karis Project podcast. We're here for episode 22 of Canada Rising Fatal Feminism, because this is a topic that, I mean, everybody has been affected by. And our whole society has changed substantially as a result of it. And so, I mean, if anybody, I mean, whatever, we'll get into it. But we have Peyman and André with us today, and my daughter, the host, Kaysha. Uh, André, since this is your first time, you want to come in and introduce yourself to our audience?
Yes, of course. My name is André Meloche. I'm from Quebec. I'm French Canadian. Thank you, Dale. Thank you, Karis, for inviting me. I'm a writer, a philosopher, sorry, quote unquote, and I'm a retired senior advisor from Hydro-Quebec. I've worked 33 years for the company in many managerial and technical domain. And since 30 years, I write novels, plays, essays, short story, fairy tale, article, and I also have a colleague, Peyman, Askari, and Tim Knight. We have a podcast, Cerberus at the Improv, and I have a podcast. I don't consider myself a podcaster because I'm not consistent enough, but I have a podcast. The name is The Philosophy of Information. So I'm very happy to be here tonight. Thanks.
Awesome, and the links are in the description if you guys are watching on Facebook or Rumble or well, actually, they're not streaming today because the link's broken. So Facebook and Rumble, you'll see the links. All right, and Peyman, you want to introduce yourself again? You were just here the other day.
Sure. My name is Peyman Askari. I was born in Iran in 83. I came to Canada in 89. I grew up in West Vancouver. I went to university in Canada. I pursued a career in 2020. Everything sort of went belly up, and I started getting more and more politically involved. I ran for a federal office for the PPC in the April election. And all those steps through the PPC, I met Mr. Meloche and our other co-host, Mr. Timothy Knight. And, the struggle continues.
Yes, it does. So, I don't know, we were having a conversation the other day about feminism, and so I figured let's just have a conversation about it online. And it was because I was watching your podcast, and the guy made a comment, and I mentioned Theosophy, and he was like, didn't really understand it and just kind of disregarded it. But what people need to understand is Theosophy is literally the foundation of feminism. But we're going to go in and we're going to look at some clips from that talks about what's her name, Emily Murphy and Nellie McClung, who were part of the Famous Five, and then we'll get into some slides of some of the first wave feminists and so forth. So let's see the way they gloss over what they did. This is how they tell it in one of those clips for the Canadian. What are those things called? The heritage moments or whatever. That's it.
But the Supreme Court of Canada agreed, you see. I could not become a senator because under the British North America Act, as a woman, I was not a person. I, Emily Murphy, author of the Janie Canuck books, pioneer in the war against narcotics, first female magistrate in the empire, but not a person. So we took it all the way to London. A group of Canadian women laboring 10 long years against ridicule, husbands saying, there, dear, until those noble lords of the Privy Council agreed in 1929. I, Emily Murphy of Alberta, and all Canadian women after me, persons under the law. So we could sit in the Senate after all.
And that was, how they present her being, a historic woman that got women to become persons and so forth. I'll pull up another clip on Nellie McClung, and then we'll watch something that talks about what actually happened with Canadians or Canadian women getting the vote. Let me just get this queued up here, because what they portray here and what actually happened are a little bit different. So let's now look at, that would be, yes, Nellie McClung.
I don't understand why women want to vote.
Oh, really?
The first time Nellie McClung saw the premier about votes for women,
Things are changing. Good day, sir.
it didn't go too well for McClung.
Take it from me, Mrs. McClung. Nice women don't want the vote.
So then she staged a mock parliament attacking votes for men.
Think what would happen if we actually allowed men to vote. Why, they would become obsessed with politics. Politics are like drinks. Once you start, if men started voting, families would be disrupted. Divorces would follow. Madam Speaker, take it from me. Nice men don't want the vote.
After a long campaign, Manitoba's women became the first to get the provincial vote. The next time they met, in a polling station, it didn't go too well for the premier.
Premier Roblin, I'm sure you don't want your photograph taken with a woman who's not nice. Gentlemen.
So, what any comments about that video on how they portrayed this? Just first thoughts.
Age
Well, we
before
could say
beauty.
ladies first.
What?
All right. Well, I think it's a load of hogwash. I think it's foolishness, and it's absolutely wicked what they done, because the man was right. Nice women don't want the vote. These women, they were like, oh, so we can sit in the Senate after all. What they wanted was power. They didn't actually want rights for themselves to be protected, because if they wanted protection, they would give
Sorry, go ahead.
they would give more authority and position to men and give them to do their job. That's not what that was. And as you've seen in the video, the arguments that the women used to bring themselves into Senate was character assassination. They actually had to change the laws and the rules for politics to include women. They had to dumb it down so that they could have proper conversations about circumstances with men in politics. Because as you see, women, when they were arguing their point why they deserve to be in there, all they were saying was character attacks and comedic effect about men, and sarcasm about things that men were saying were genuinely true would happen to women and homes and families and structures and protection for society if they allowed this to happen. And now we've seen that it was the case, it was true. But women don't look at circumstances the way that men do. They don't understand them or outline them in the same way. So men had to completely lower the standard of politics. You used to have to write tens and tens of pages to outline the circumstances of a fact, to bring your position in politics for you to justify why something should be done. Now it's not the case. You come in, it's all theater, it's nonsense, because they brought women into it. And again, like you'll see as we continue to go here, and as we start bringing the actual quotes of what some of these women said, the first wave feminists, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, Annie Besant, Amelia Bloomer, all of these first wave feminists, they were involved in theosophy. They believed that the serpent was going to deliver them from God and man, so the devil himself. They wrote this in the women's Bible, and they were completely predatory, wicked women. They wanted nothing to do with family or being submissive or a team with a husband. They wanted complete control. They were even supporting the trans agenda in that time, because they wanted a gender fluidity. It's where they brought in, for the first time in history, women starting to wear pants. And these women went completely against everything what the Bible said. They wanted nothing to do with God. They wanted complete control and authority. And they also even advocated for abortion, a form of controlling conception and having full control over their own bodies. All the evil that we're seeing now these first wave feminists, the women who were involved in helping push these women into the Senate, were involved in pushing. Yeah. Sorry, that was a lot. I'm long-winded.
That's a very good introduction. If I may say, two remarks. The first one is you mentioned lowering the standard, and the second thing I would say, don't dilute the vote or don't split the vote. They like this expression today. Don't split the vote. We think about democracy. Everybody's voting. Goats are voting. Now they want to lower the age for voting at 16 years old. The question that I would ask you toward women voting or universal suffrage is, are people aware of their duty? And do you believe that today in the House of Commons, the debate are rational? Because we know women are more emotional, men are more rational naturally, but you do see women that are very rational, and they have the right to be representative. But naturally, lowering the standard, and like you said earlier, they wanted power. They didn't want people to have the same rights, and we have rights and privilege in Canada. So I will just stop here. It's a question too.
Yeah, and
I'll just jump in here quickly. And yes, they're rational women, but the reason why women weren't included in politics is for this fundamental reason. Women do not know how to protect themselves from bad men.
No, they don't.
And this is why they can't effectively participate in decisions in politics to protect society from bad men, because they don't know how.
Right.
Right? And it's not sexist, because women need protection.
Right.
And nobody's discounting that. But if you can't protect yourself from bad men, how are you going to be able to create like the right structures to protect yourself from the bad men when you don't know how?
Exactly.
It's
they're acting. Society has lied to women and made them believe that the exception of women have become the rule. Like the exceptionally logical and rational woman that has a great father, maybe God, in her home, because she maintains a level of rationality and logic and analysis in the way that she approaches things. Maybe she's practical and pragmatic. I'm one of those females. I still cannot break the glass ceiling and become a man and have the agency of men as men. And it is making women believe they can, which is putting them in a lot of situations because they're like, oh, I can. That's what society taught me. Then they put themselves in more dangerous situations with men that are actually dangerous. And they get into loads of problems. And they're like, why is this happening? And then this is why women want position of power, because then they're like, I should be able to be in this dangerous space with these evil people, and they should not have the right to do anything to me. So then it becomes, if you offend me, it's a crime. And then there's policies that they put in place that if you do any slight offense verbally or emotionally, it is now a crime, or you're doing thought crimes instead of circumstantial awareness and prevention instead of cure.
I remember in the House of Commons, I think it's probably the late 70s or maybe early 80s, when Pierre Elliott Trudeau, was still president, and they were dropping F-bombs inside of the House of Commons. Yes! And so forth. Imagine if that was directed towards a woman today.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm not saying that was the case, but sometimes things got heated and whatever else like that. That was the situation. But, you were going to say something?
It's just, women think that being in these positions of power gives them automatic safety. A man would never go into a room and assume just because someone has a certain position that means another man can't create circumstances. Like, men understand things completely differently and they create things differently. Women seem to think that if they have money and position and power, automatically that means they're safe from every bad man in the world, and that's not true.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say they still get raped and murdered. Like, it doesn't change anything.
What I want to play here is a clip that discusses how women actually got the vote in Canada.
Yeah.
Because what they showed you there with Nellie McClung was not really the case. So let's pull this up.
Unlike in most countries, women started off with the right to vote in Canada. Early voter rights in Canada only allowed for landowners to vote. Early female landowners would vote under the principle that if they paid taxes, they would get to vote. No taxation without representation. This was stopped in 1800 Quebec, then known as Upper Canada, when a law sternly stated that only male landowners would get to vote. While the suffrage movements around the world were marked with violence and protest, the movement in Canada was civil and used humor as a weapon. The earliest supporters of women's suffrage in Canada was the Christian temperance movement that called for the alcohol prohibition across the country. Many argued that without women's votes, there would never be an end to alcohol consumption in the country. Thankfully, they were never able to achieve their goal. The movement was quite racist towards Chinese and worried about the drugs that the Chinese were using and giving to white men. A list of drugs being used by the Chinese included opium and marijuana, and they were placed on a ban list that remained unedited for almost a century. The main push for the suffrage came from the western prairies, where farm culture allowed for women to run the business and gain an education. An early protest in Ottawa saw 6 women perform a mock play in which they took sides like parliamentarians.
Oh, why they would become obsessed with politics. Politics are like drinks. Once you start, if men started...
The bit of comedy caught the imaginations of Canadians. Among the young actresses was Nellie McClung, who would become the leader of a group named the Famous Five. McClung would also rise to become an elected member of the Alberta legislature. Women's suffrage spread across Canada starting in 1916. First, Manitoba allowed women to vote in their provincial legislation, then Saskatchewan, then Alberta, then British Columbia, and finally Ontario. Suffrage in the rest of Canada would take more doing though. After all, there was a war going on, and it was taking its toll on the country's supply of able-bodied voting men. If female suffrage was approved, it would mean that women, rather than men, would be deciding the fate of the country. And that was also the moment that sparked the right to vote for women across Canada. With Canada's male volunteers fighting in Europe, there was a need to pass conscription, and a need to get more men to fight and die on the front lines. But Canada's bravest men were off fighting and thus not able to vote. What remained in Canada were refugees, immigrants, and men presumed too cowardly to fight. In terms of a voting bloc, it was one that would never vote for conscription. In 1917, all women who served in the military, or were related to someone who served in the military, were given the right to vote. At the same time, any citizens naturalized after 1902 were stripped of their right to vote. Conscription, of course, passed. This was not just a victory for women who wanted to vote, but also for men. It was the first time that voter rights were extended to non-land-owning males. After the war ended, all women across Canada were given the right to vote, considered a reward for their great service to the country in its time of need. Women during the war took on many of the duties that typically men had kept, the industries, farms, and service of the country's working while men were gone. All the provinces gave voting rights to women after this. The Maritimes gave them in roughly the same year, although New Brunswick wouldn't allow women to run for government until 1940. In that same year, Quebec, being the laggard and the last one, would allow women to vote. The final issue that arose was as to whether or not women could be appointed to the Senate. The Senate required an appointee to be first and above all else a person, and women were blocked from joining the lower house entirely on this basis. To the rescue were the Famous Five: Emily Murphy, Irene Parlby, Nellie McClung, Louise McKinley, and Henrietta Ware Edwards. People are mixed on their opinions of these women. They were white supremacists who were actively campaigning for institutional eugenics across Canada. In terms of immigration, they believed that only white people should be permitted to immigrate to Canada. Emily Murphy would often lecture on not allowing people with bad genes to procreate. Nellie McClung, while in Alberta legislature, campaigned to sterilize the handicapped, but also wanted to sterilize Aboriginals and the Chinese. So although they were fighting the good fight, they were also not too popular with Canada's left-leaning groups. In 1916, Emily Murphy walked into a courtroom to hear a case. She was kicked out as the subject matter was not fit for a woman. The five surfaced a petition that would force the courts to answer the question, are women legally considered a person? Henrietta Edwards, on behalf of Emily Murphy, took the issue to court. A judge ruled that in Alberta, that if a woman cannot be present in a courtroom because it is not fit for a woman, then there must be a women's court with women judges. By this notion, women must be persons because they must then be permitted to be judges. The challenge then went to Canada, where Emily Murphy submitted her name to become a Canadian senator. She was rejected on the basis that she was not a person. After it went to the Supreme Court, a ruling in what is known as the Persons case ruled that women are in fact people. Women could now become senators. In 1989, Canada had its first female prime minister. But that's a story for another time.
So, in order to get the women to vote, they blocked the immigrants that came, which were mostly from Europe, that left and understood the conditions of what were going on in the war. And so they could conscript more men to the war. And that's how they got the vote.
Yeah.
If I can jump in, I didn't know that about the history of women's right to vote. And this is going to be a common theme all night tonight. I'm not going to be as well-versed on this material as the three of you. Dale, you and I were having a conversation yesterday on the phone, and I kind of said, like, we're so far along on this path with militant feminism where they're creating disunity, they're creating conflict between men and women.
Yes.
The purpose of that, in my opinion, it's to break up the family unit, and the purpose of that is to centralize power in the state.
Yes.
So it's almost like if you want to reverse this, you can't even criticize feminism, because then the women in the urban centers, they just go nuts. It's almost, I don't think it's possible, or if it's something we want to do, to take the right for women, the right of women to vote away. The way I look at it is, if you extend suffrage, if you extend the right to vote to people that don't own land or don't have some stake in the country, like serve in the military, serve in public office for free or something, democracy is just it's gonna take over. And
go ahead. No, finish your thought.
I was just gonna say, like, if you wanna really tackle this, we have to find some way to make public office less appealing, so less people go into that, and we have to find some way to get people out of the urban centers and more self-sustaining in the countrysides.
Well, it was.
Well, I just wanted to say, the fundamental principle here that people that didn't look at, women were never, ever subject to conscription. They didn't face the consequences. It was never something that related to them. And so they voted to pass something that would never affect them.
It was a requirement to go to war to be able to vote. Giving women the right to vote was taking away the responsibility and giving them the full benefit, which makes everybody else a slave to them.
They gave the power to vote, but they don't get the consequences of conscription. This was wholly unfair.
Yes.
It was, they had no business doing it, but the government wanted to send more people over to the war front. And the only way they could do it was, like they said, they blocked men that were immigrants. They didn't care if they were property owners.
Yep.
You got stripped of the right to vote if you came after 1902. And these were mostly Europeans that were coming over.
Yep.
And a whole lot of them were German.
Yep. And those women were Nazis.
They just said no. And this is it's not the issue of giving them the vote. It's how they went about to do it.
Yep.
And that they would never have consequences. This is what we're seeing here now. And this is a problem with feminism. The women have the power, but they don't have the consequences of the men.
Yep.
And the men are left with the consequences all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then, if women want the vote, then they need the consequences that men get.
Yes.
You're going to get the full consequences that men get, and see if you want to go ahead and continue to hold the power. Because with that, we're always left with the consequences.
Yep.
And that's not fair to us. Like, because those men that went and got sent to die and they couldn't vote on it, and someone else held their fate,
Yep.
that's wrong. I don't care what it is, right?
That's what women
There's
consistently
one.
do. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I think I agree with you. You know, how to manipulate the mind of people and act and consequences. You mentioned something earlier about 1920, 1925. Women started to mimic men. They started to mimic the behavior of men. I have an example. Violette Maurice, who was she was a race car driver in Germany, and she became a Nazi agent in 1925. She was murdered around 1930, 1935, and she had her breast cut so she could pass for a man. And you have many examples of androgyne behavior at the time. Alexandra Kolanta, who was a woman who was related to Lenin in Soviet Union, 1925. She was one of the first feminists in the Soviet Union, and they were trying to push, for example, abortion. They were trying to push universal suffrage, not necessarily to have power, to gain power, but without consequences. Because when I look at the famous five, they all became part of what we call the elite. The elite always take decision without any consequences.
Yes.
If there's a conscription, for example, they will not go to war. They will send people. There was a general in France last week who said to France, he said, you will have to sacrifice your children. So if you arrive at a point where people who are supposed to represent society, they don't suffer the consequences of their action, of course they will be disconnected from reality. And I see the tendency in the last 80, maybe 90 years of copying the behavior of men instead of being genuine. Women are genuine. They have a brain. You have great surgeon. I can just refer to one person that I a lot is Anna Arendt, who in my opinion, she's the greatest philosopher of the 20th century. I may not always agree with what she wrote, but she was a strong person and an intellectual person. I could talk about her story. I will not, because it's quite long, but the idea is that we are not equal. And it's not being equal that is important. It's to be different, to have different perspective. In politics, it should be rational decision. But we know politics, it's the art of language. When we debate, it's the art of language. And women, when they arrive in a situation of language, unless they are academic, or unless they are really expert in their domain, they will always be more emotional. That's quite normal to act like this. So in the parliament, we can talk about universal suffrage, but representation, they do not, like you mentioned earlier, they do not suffer the consequences of their action.
No, they don't. And I will dare say this now. Women have less power now than they did before.
Exactly.
Because the women that are in power are only in power because of men.
Yep.
Because politics is like everything to men is strategy in war. Everything. Women don't understand how men interact with other men when they're strategizing and they're doing war. Men are better actors because if you let the wrong expression go in a certain situation, you're dead. Women don't have that same consequence. Like a woman, you say something to startle her and the expression will give it away. Men don't do this because men can die in those situations. And so you get a woman in a situation where they're around a bunch of sharks, and without men, they're sitting ducks. And they're oftentimes, like, look at what happened to Brenda Lucki. Brenda Lucki was thrown under the bus. Men don't operate the way she did under pressure. You watch the way Duhaime and all these other guys come in and act when they're under pressure. they don't act the way she did. She was like a deer in the headlights, left out to dry. And this
Well,
is what
you mentioned something important. You say women, but feminized men today. I call them castrated. They act and they mimic women because the
they're
actual
conditioned.
feminism holds power, and because they want to access power, now they're doing exactly what women were doing in the 1920s. They're mimicking women with feminism. And after that, we have an example in Quebec. The leader of the Parti Québécois, every time he has a hard question, he starts to cry. It's like Trudeau was always crying. They're mimicking women
Yeah.
because women are holding the actual power, and the only way they could access to power is to imitate them. We see this in the House of Commons all the time.
But it's a manipulative tactic, and
Yes.
they're held
Of course.
men are held less accountable. Feminism has
Of
allowed
course.
predatory men to run rampant in this country because there were situations where men would do something like that and they would expect physical consequences. Somebody would just teach them a lesson. And some of the things, well, it might cost your life if you were going to put your hands on someone's wife or someone's child. And nobody would care. But now, God forbid, you touch a predator and you may end up going to prison. Right? And how it makes it more difficult for men to protect women. I just wanted to
Of course.
pull up some of these slides here with Elizabeth Cady Stanton. This woman wrote the Woman's Bible. She was a Theosophist. And we're going to pull up some of the quotes that she said because she is one of the co-founders of the women's suffrage movement with Susan B. Anthony. And then there was a few others that were down there, like the Claflin sisters and so forth. And so she set the standard. So let's pull up what she has to say here. Oh, let's go back here. So she says here, the canon and civil laws, church and state, priests and legislators, all political parties and religious denominations have alike taught that woman was made after man, of man, and for man, an inferior being subject to man. Creeds, codes, scriptures, and statutes, all based on this idea. The fashions, forms, and ceremonies of society, church ordinances, and discipline all grow out of this idea. Now, what she's failing to say is that men and women in the eyes of God are equal value, but they're different. And they're necessary. And in fact, the woman has the greater role because she has to shape the minds of the children for future generations. Women have more power in that role than anybody else. They shape destiny by shaping the minds. This is why the state is fighting for that position because it holds the most power. You shape the events because when women look at the women that are feminists that are raising these weak men. They never used to do that before.
Yeah.
But now, because if the woman doesn't do her job, the father's job is impossible.
Yeah.
Because if that foundation of character is not laid down, because they have that natural bond with the child, because they carry the child, man doesn't have it, he can't replicate that. She has the natural best one to lay that down. But now they're telling you, don't worry about it. Let the state do it. And look at what's happening to our kids.
Yep. Those would
when we look at the title, Patriarchy, Monotheism, the Death of the Goddess, I always refer to Robert Graves now because I'm reading the Greek myths. And you had matriarchal society and you have patriarchal society, and we're shifting. I think it's the end of an era. We are shifting from maybe 100 years of a matriarchal society that was hidden behind political control. And we're starting to shift because we see that women in power, like you mentioned, they are not capable of defending either the nation, the children, or even themselves. Man
Yes.
is an aggressive animal naturally. Women don't have this type of aggressivity. Take an example in Alberta, in the drilling companies. Do you see any women?
Nope.
There's no women. But you in Quebec now, you have 70% of the doctors in Quebec are women.
Yeah.
Do we have better health care? No.
No.
No, we don't.
I would argue it's worse. It's worse.
Well, we had a podcast today. We were talking about abortion, and I have a friend who's a Lebanese, and his mother was a midwife in Lebanon. She gave birth to probably 10,000 children. Women as midwife are extremely good because they feel and understand what it is pregnancy.
Of course.
Obstetrician, doctors, men doctors. We, like you mentioned, Dale, we are complementary. We have to be able to work together.
Yeah, that's the whole point.
Yep.
But let's look at what she says here. This is Cady Stanton in the Women's Bible. Is she rewrote, and reinterpreted the Bible.
Yeah.
And she said, the new humanity is to be born of this higher manhood and emancipated womanhood. Then it will be possible for motherhood to continue in sanctification. So the higher manhood comes from the emancipated womanhood. When you begin to understand the mindset of these women, the women actually become the savior of mankind. They have a savior complex. These women, a lot of these women were very abused. You can tell by their writings. And so you're having abused women making judgment on the characters, or judgment on what a man should be.
Yes.
But this is what she is. This is what she's laying down the foundation of this in first wave feminism.
Yep.
You know, if I can jump in.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed when I first came to Canada, and I didn't know it at the time, but this phrase that we use now for Marxism, oppressor and oppressed, like everything is framed in terms of people hating each other, bad people. I don't understand why they couldn't just leave well enough alone. Like you have a family unit, and you have a husband and wife that get along together, they love their children, but then all of this ideology comes in, like feminism. And I noticed this in grade 4 and in grade 5, like they were saying boys are bad, women are victims. It's just this victim mentality, and it's, I guess they're doing it for votes. And we were talking about earlier how women are more emotional, including feminized men. Well, it's just easier when somebody's emotional. It's just easier to control them, and that's what we see the politicians doing now to gain political power.
That's exactly it. That is exactly it.
The position of victim also is important because when you are a minority group, that was the first wave of feminist, the woman is not a person, so I'm a victim. And they try to take advantage of this position. After that, the black movement in 1950 and 1960, after that, it was the gay. So it's always a position of a victim, so you can weaponize the group and use it to gain power. And this is quite classical since maybe 80 years. Every time you have a group that is in minority, somebody will use it as a weapon to gain power or to disturb society.
But it's funny about. Sorry.
Go ahead.
What's really funny about these women? A lot of them came from money, from people
Like
who
you
had
said,
elite. They came from elite status
Yes.
parents who were judges and high position in society, and they would use minority class people or people who considered
poor
themselves
class.
other and poor class to do the footwork of their agenda to make them believe that they could live like them, when the only reason they have the authority and position to do things is because they were among the elite, because they had money and they had status already. And it was, so they were just selling the lie from the jump. But even the fact that women sit in the position of I'm a victim and I need to talk you in and convince you with words to give me what I want or manipulate you, shows the weakness of position they come from, because men don't try to talk to each other into position. They force each other into what they want.
They play the chess match.
Yes.
This Elizabeth Cady Stanton. First wave feminists. In America they used black men.
Yes.
To get what they want.
Exactly.
Yes.
They used them, and when black men got the vote, this woman went ballistic. She was like Sambo got the vote before, and she went and sided with the KKK.
Yes.
Straight out, went full meltdown.
Yeah.
Because they believed that a white woman was better than a black man and should be in positions above a black man. But it doesn't matter what race that is, a man is a man.
Right.
You were never going to outperform a man at being a man. This is ludicrous.
Yeah.
Feminism, biggest form of DEI, because they were displacing, and this is how they begin to degrade the society, they were displacing capable men. And this is why women, feminists, they were eugenicists and they were racist, because then they could get into positions.
Yes.
And when they indoctrinated their children that way, they could get placed into positions before the capable minority men that would fill the jobs and did it better than them.
Yes.
This is why they were this way. But I want to touch back on where you were talking about the victim mentality. You can see this being set up in how she's framing this. She says the Old Testament makes woman a mere afterthought in creation. The author of evil, cursed in her maternity, a subject in marriage, and all female life, animal and human, unclean. The church in all ages has taught these doctrines and acted on them, claiming divine authority therefore. As Christ is the head of the church, so is man head of the woman. This idea of woman's subordination is reiterated times without number. From Genesis to Revelation, this is the basis of all church action. What she does here is she's making men, and then by extension God, like the devil, because they are enslaving and subjugating woman. And then she says, as Christ is the head of the church, so is man head of the woman. So if Christ and man are the same, they're both going to be tyrannical. They're enslaving you. Because when you read and we'll discuss this a little bit later, but when you start reading Gerda Lerner's The Creation of the Patriarchy, this becomes abundantly clear.
Yeah.
And also with Helena Blavatsky and André Besant, and even some of these writings, this becomes very clear.
Yeah.
So go ahead. Anybody have any comments on this?
Well, I have one thought about, let's say one thought, the author of evil. Quite fascinating because it's a shortcut. When you look at the quote, as Christ is the head of the church, so is man the head of woman. That's not at all what is it about creation of men and women. It is, because you mentioned it earlier, we're complementary, we're completely different. We need each other. So we cannot be, there's no such thing as one in a head and one in the back. We're both side by side. So that's a sophism. It's quite fascinating. The second thing is the author of evil, the Old Testament. We can refer to the Talmud and the idea of Mammon, and the idea of who are we worshiping? Are we worshiping God, patriarchy, or are we worshiping what we would call material world? The mother, the woman is material because she carries a baby. The man is strategic. You mentioned it earlier, Dale. Men are strategic. Women are tactical. You don't see women performing in war. You don't see perform. No. Let's take an simple example. Do you see any people who are watching female football?
No.
Yeah, no.
They watch men football, especially American football. Why? Because outside the fact that women they usually they play in bikini. It's just to appeal to men. Nobody watches that. They watch the NFL. They watch the Canadian Football League, because men in a game like this, they're aggressive. Same thing with hockey, and it is quite fascinating. I don't say that women cannot perform in, for example, in Olympics. Russian or Soviet Union at the time Olympic champion were extraordinary. Romanian, I forgot her name. She was 14 years old. She won the Olympics in 1976. She did a perfect 10. Women are extraordinary, gracious. They are so different from men, and this, I think, it's important. The quote here shows that they feel inferior.
Yes,
Men never said that women were inferior.
No, and what she's talking about, the headship, she has no idea what it means, because when you go back to creation, God told Adam, if you eat of this tree, you're going to die. He didn't say that to Eve. So the life and death situations he gave to Eve, designating him as the protector. And then Adam went and dressed and keep the garden to prepare the way for Eve. So he's the one to create the critical infrastructure for his wife to come along. The headship means to accept the love and protection of your husband because you can't do it yourself. That is literally what it is. Because if you read where it talks about Christ and the church, it says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church, that he gave his life for it. So you are called as a husband to protect your wife and your family, even if it costs you your life, because God has given you the strength and the ability as a strategist to protect your family from all of these threats around you. And that's what it is. So she's taking something that is supposed to be for the benefit and the protection and to help elevate the woman to be the best that she can be, to make it like it's slavery.
Yeah.
I'll just add one thing. Whenever I read things like this, it reminds me of the Communist Manifesto. It's just a bunch of gibberish that's written in such a way to get people to hate something, to feel a certain way. It's not reason based. It's not logic based.
Yeah.
And my bullshit radar kind of goes off.
That's what I said to you earlier, Peyman, that all this stuff, when you see what they're saying, it's straight character assassination. They're not outlining circumstances. They're not doing reason or logic. They're not presenting the statement of facts or their case or why it makes sense to do something, the who, what, when, where, why, how. They're just saying, this is why we should do it because it hurts my feelings, and character assassination from every direction. This is how women make their points. This is a clear demonstration on why they have no place whatsoever in any position of power. Power is like kryptonite to women. They can't even smell power. If they're even in the vicinity of power, it absolutely corrupts. Power corrupts men. Women can't even handle it.
They can't wield the power that was meant for men, just like men can't wield the power that was meant for women.
But
they gave us our own areas.
My problem is, I agree with what you said earlier, sir, because it's like men and women are different. We're not the same. We will never be equal. I will never have the strength of a man. I will never have the logic or reason or circumstantial understanding of a man or the headship or authority. God did not put me in that position. The fact is, I get really frustrated with society where they want to constantly, we have to praise women before acknowledging the fact that they don't belong somewhere. It's nonsense. It's like it puts women in a place where it's almost above where they are. Women need to know their place and understanding because there's protection in that. When you have a man, it's protection for you. Women who don't have fathers or husbands, they're the most abused class of society, and their children are the most vulnerable class of society. So why we constantly have to, and again, men do things a little bit differently because obviously they're going to get attacked 6 ways from Sunday. But because of things like what we've seen here, people always feel the need to sugarcoat. Okay, well, women are great in all these other ways. Okay, but that has nothing to do with war and strategy. Women suck in this area, and they need to just accept the fact that they have no place there.
I just wanted to say something quickly before you go to the next slide. You had mentioned about women having a place in politics, and so women actually had more influence in politics, and I'll tell you why. Because women were never responsible for creating solutions, which they can't.
Yeah, they can't.
Especially when it comes to protection for men.
Yeah.
Right? They would go to the men, and then the onus would be on the men to deliver.
Yep.
And this is where, if you didn't deliver, then you had to come back to your wife and your children and say, well, I can't protect you. What man is going to do that? Because how is his family going to look at him when he doesn't do this? Right? So it shifted, took responsibility away from men to be men. And this is bad, because then men are not being pushed to do what they need to do. Right? And I'm not saying now that women have to go back and just sit in the kitchen. This is not what I'm saying. I'm saying is, you need to don't do the work for men, because women will want to do it if the man is to do it. Men don't do other men's work. They don't. Because they're going to make you do it, because it's going to sit there until you get it done. But women will feel the need to do it, and doing that will cripple the men. And this is where they need to step back and let men just be men and figure it out.
If women had the capacity, let alone the capability,
Go ahead, finish.
to do what you said, they would never get raped. Case in point.
You mentioned something about being able to defend yourself. Neo, I have maybe a question for you as a woman. You said something about the kryptonite. You referred to Superman, and many years ago we had Superman, and then we had Superwoman or Wonder Woman. That's the difference. They did not use the expression Superwoman. They used the expression Wonder Woman, because Superwoman does not fit the narrative. My wife, she always say, the man is the head, the woman is the neck. The woman will just make the head move. That's a tactic. Man is directive. So you as a woman, what's your take about power, political power? Is it something that appeals to women?
Is it that's a question? Is
yes, it's a
political power? Is it something that appeals to women? Honestly, I think political power appeals to abused women who have no good men in their life and never experienced good men. And they had either cucks for fathers and feminist women who were mothers, and they never experienced what it was like to have a genuine God and a man in their life who loved and cared for them. So they think that if they get this position of power and money and leadership, they can force, manipulate, and coerce in a predatory way men to do what they want, because they never had that protection. So now they're like, I need to go and force. Women who are feminists like this, they have a very predatory mindset. They're very manipulative. They're very coercive. They believe it's my way or the highway. They are more tyrannical than the men that they are afraid of. They demonstrate the behaviors of the men they claim to hate, and then raise the same predators that they're afraid of in the little boys, because they have no idea what it means to be a man. Women who are raised with good fathers and have good men in their life, they want nothing to do with that, because they understand consequences. They understand the burden of what it means to be a man just from watching their father, and they're comfortable in their position and very happy in their position as a woman to be a daughter, and eventually to stand beside a man as a wife, as a support and help me. I want nothing to do with power.
Sorry, Peyman, you had something you wanted to say?
Sorry, go ahead.
Sure. André, are you done, or do you want to comment on what she said?
Yes. No, I'm done.
I wanted to make an observation, and then I'll pass it over to André if you want to, put a philosophical spin on it. I think what they're trying to do is they're smushing women into men. Like they want an egalitarian society, but to do that, like you either have to get rid of men or you have to get rid of women. And honestly, it seems like they're getting rid of the concept of women. This whole like men and women's sports, and they're squeezing these two completely different people together, and it's causing conflict. And I think that's why women are just so miserable. And again, I'm basing this on observation. Whereas I used to go to a party in like the early 2000s, and then by about like 2012, I go to a party, and the same women that were happy, everybody was in harmony. Now they're miserable. Everyone's in constant conflict. It's like, imagine if you have an electron and a proton and you're trying to squish them together and they're trying to resist each other. If you don't recognize that they're different, it's going to lead to these problems.
Yes.
Kaysha mentioned it also. Women, a woman who will go into politics or will become an academic or will become an engineer or a doctor. Those are the exception, and nobody says that they cannot do it. It's not the question. But if you generalize the idea, you will force a lot of people to go against their, I would say, their natural behavior. It doesn't mean that we would keep women or the society would keep women undereducated. It has nothing to do at all. If we go back to the famous five, they were advocating for power, like you mentioned earlier, not for universal suffrage, and this dilutes the vote. A lot of people are voting. Are they fit to vote? We could ask the question about what is democracy.
Yeah, I never voted a day in my life. And the question I think people think, can women do it? Just because they can doesn't mean they should. The suffering, you have to calculate the risk and the suffering to that woman going through the process of what a man would do, because what a man will do with ease, it will take 10 times more suffering and pain and hit to herself to do it. And then when you think about the risk and consequence to society, if we have all these women going out and doing what men do, now look, our birth rate is so low. Every person would need to have 3 or 4 children just to maintain the numbers and not for them to continue to drop. You need to have more children to replace, and we're not even at that level. And it's like, this is why we're having people come in and being replaced.
Okay, I want to go through a couple of slides because just because I want to get through at least these ones. We're probably going to have to come back and go back and do this further because there's a lot more stuff I want to go through, but we're never going to get through that at the rate that we're going. But because this is an important topic that people need to understand the mindset behind this. So I'll read through this. It says the Woman Bible state these dogmas in plain English, agreeing fully with the Bible teaching and church action. Yet women meet in convention and denounce the Women's Bible while clinging to the church and their scriptures. The only difference between us, we say, is that these degrading ideas of women emanated from the brain of man, while the church says that they came from God. And this is, again, that same type of thinking. Now, this is Helena Blavatsky, who is the founder of Theosophy, because Elizabeth Cady Stanton, she is a Theosophist. And she was and a lot of these first wave feminists were Theosophists, like Annie Besant from the UK. She took up after Helena Blavatsky, and the work that she did, you will understand why our society is like the way it is. This is, they were laying, these women, I'll give it to these women. A lot of these women, they were brilliant. Very brilliant. But they employed it for the wrong tactics. A lot of them were abused. But we'll read this here. As shown by Bentley, the war of Titans against the god in Hesiod, and also the war of Osiris against the Devas in Puranic legend, are identical in all save the names. The aspects of the stars show, Bentley taking the year 945 BC as the near a state for such conjunction that all the planets except Saturn were on the same side of the heavens as the sun and moon, and hence were his opponents. Yet it is Saturn, or the Jewish moon god, who is shown as prevailing both by Hesiod and Moses, neither of whom was understood. Thus it was that the real meaning became distorted. So they're basically saying, identifying that God is the devil, and that man and the patriarchy are actually working, the devil, man is working with the devil to oppress the woman.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I can
Andre.
just say something.
Yes.
Some men are working with the devil.
Yes.
And this is where maybe we have to identify those men, because when we read the quote, and ants were his opponent, and yet it is Saturn, or the Jewish moon god. The moon was always representing the women's side. It is quite fascinating, because the sun, Jupiter, or I'm sorry, I forgot the Greek name. The
Zeus.
sun is
Zeus.
Yes, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. The sun is the male part. The moon is the female part. You have the satellite, and of course they will arrive and they will say, we don't want to turn around man. We don't want the satellite to turn around the planet or around the star like the sun. But unfortunately, that's what women always do. They turn around men because they want power, and they will achieve power by seduction, by manipulation. And I don't say this in a pejorative sense. It is normal. I think Kaysha mentioned also how to achieve security and happiness if you're not protected. And what would men do in a society where you're not protected? You go to war. You go to war because you want to achieve peace. You want to achieve stability. And I see in this quote that I think many women are manipulated through feminism. They're manipulated so somebody can control them.
Yes.
And make them believe that man is the enemy, which is not true.
Yes, and this is they're doing a lot of, most women don't understand what is actually being done.
Right.
And the people who funded this were like the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, and all of these elites, and you have to understand why they did it. Because when you start to begin to understand the way they're thinking is, like, I'll read this quote here, what she says. Now, Anu belongs to the Chaldean Trinity and is identical with Sin, the moon, in one aspect. The moon and the Hebrew Kabbalah is the arga of the seed of the material of life, and is still more closely connected Kabbalistically with Jehovah, who is double-sexed, and in who are both represented in esotericism and viewed from a dual aspect, male or spiritual, female or material, or spirit and matter, the two antagonistic principles. And as this further develops, then you start understanding, when you look at how they represent Baphomet as both male and female.
Yeah, this was the androgynous
which
stuff,
is the androgynous, and that's like the transgendered man.
Yes.
This is where these ideas come from. This is warped mentality.
Yes.
And so forth. And then as you begin to understand, they start showing how the sexual agency comes in.
And that's where Amelia Bloomer, where they had the Bloomer pants, the Bloomer outfit, where she ushered in wearing male pants under the women dress. And eventually the dress got shorter and shorter, and you would see more of the pants until they were officially just wearing men clothing. Nowhere in history ever did women wear pants until these people came and did this. There were doctors even in the time that was talking about the dangers of having your skin exposed, your extremities, like your stomach, your ankles, your neck, your wrists, and your back, because you could have respiratory diseases and others that are irreversible after a certain amount of time, because there's not as strong flesh and stuff covering your extremities the way that they do on your face that's supposed to be constantly exposed. So there was so many different reasons, but they didn't care. They wanted free sex and all these things. This is what they were talking about. But go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to go through this quote because I want to flip through
Dale?
some of what.
Can I? Most of this stuff is beyond me, but can you go back? I think it was 3 slides.
Okay.
Not this. Me think the Women's Bible. Well, I think it was. Which one was it? The Old Testament women were after creation, another either cursed in maternity. No, the one after this. Same woman. Yeah, it goes back to what I was saying about Karl Marx and the Communist Manifesto. Like these people, there's something in the world they hate. So maybe Karl Marx didn't have enough money, and he tried to find something in the world to blame, and he blamed capitalism and free markets.
Yes.
It's sort of the same thing with this woman. Like she's angry about something.
She was
Now,
abused.
I don't know.
Yes.
Maybe she was
speak
abused.
like rape
Maybe
victims.
somebody stood her up. But like she hates men. And
Yes.
Maybe she hates men, or she's turning her anger towards the church. And people that followed her, they believe these stories because these people are good storytellers. Justice Antonin Scalia, he did an interview with Piers Morgan, and
Yes.
Piers Morgan he's putting a question to Scalia, and he goes, was it right that in a world where you didn't have women in a position of the judiciary, that we could write something like the Constitution that imprisoned all these women? They didn't take the women's considerations into mind. And Scalia is like, well, what are you talking about? And then Pierce is like, well, the people that wrote the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights, they were men. And Scalia is like, well, yeah, but they had wives, they had daughters, they loved their daughters. And Pierce was kind of taken back. It's you go through life and you listen to all of this propaganda ever since childhood, and it's just beaten into you like all. And this doesn't happen in the Middle East. It happens here in the West, where you're taught to hate yourself. All Western, Christian, Canadian, American, European men, they were all drunks and racists, and they hated their family, and families were miserable. And so you believe these lies.
Well, Helena Blavatsky, she was Russian. She was a Russian spy first. And after, she was one of the first feminists in the sense that she, the permanent revolution, Marxist permanent revolution, you never have the time to rest and meditate. And the second one was Alexandra Kollontai, which I referred to. She was a revolutionary woman in 1920 with Lenin. So, of course, they painted men, but elite. They painted men, the elite, as the enemy, but they wanted to replace the elite. They want to take their place. So they used women who were weak, intellectually speaking. I don't say they were not intelligent. They were intellectually weak, and they manipulated them to overthrow the power. At the time, it was the Tsar, and after that, it came back in the Western world, because the Western world followed for about 40, 50 years.
Yes.
The easiest woman...
Just 1 second. Go ahead, Kaysha.
Just the easiest, to your point, the easiest woman to manipulate and the weakest woman is the one that doesn't understand the value of a father or their husband. And men exploit that consistently.
I want...
Exactly.
I know that this is something that, some of this is over your head, but I want you to get this from this slide, because this is important. Bel, Ishtar, and Venus. Bel is Baal, what they consider Baal Moloch. Ishtar, Venus, are Astarte, Ashtaroth. The god. This is the fertility goddess.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right? So this
Astarte.
this is who they're siding with. And I want to skip through to the quote, because they're bringing this whole idea into this. And where is it here? Let me get to the one here. But they're talking about the Holy Spirit.
Will there be an examination at the end of this?
No. I'm just looking for the one where we get to, where is it, with Gerda Lerner? Is it here? Do I have it? No, it's not in this one. There it is.
Yeah.
Right here. where she talks about the mother goddess. This is who she's talking about. And it says, and finally the recognition that they were excluded from directly being able to represent the divine principle, the boundary of patriarchal dominance, and finally the recognition that they were excluded directly from being able to represent the divine principle. The weight of biblical narrative seemed to decree that by the will of God, women were included in his covenant only through the mediation of men. Here is the historic moment of the death of the mother goddess and her replacement by God the Father and the metaphorical mother under the patriarchy. And they are talking about Astarte, Ashtaroth, Ishtar, Venus, Baal, because that's the male aspect, because Baal is or Apis the bull, what they were doing at Mount Sinai when they were having basically an orgy. This is that unrestrained sexuality.
Yeah.
That is the liberation. This is what is being taught as feminism.
Yeah.
You can recognize this also with Dionysos and the Bacchantus, and
yes,
and this is quite interesting what you're mentioning, because it's always a way to express the aggressivity that cannot be attained by a woman. It's totally counterintuitive, especially when we look at the way that women react toward a crisis. We have now a lot of women in politics who cannot handle, a tsunami, a storm, a hurricane. They don't know how to react. I think it was in Los Angeles, the one woman mayor, she could not face the riot. She could not even face the journalist. And if some journalists wanted to challenge her, she was avoiding the question. They cannot face crisis. This is quite important. I would say we had a hard storm in 1998. Did you see any linemen who were women? There was zero. It was only men who could sustain the extreme weather, the bad condition. That's a fact. It's not something that comes from. If they want to do this job, they can go, but they will not perform. At least generally, you will have some women who will perform, but that's a minority.
Yes. And this is where the two things that the women in feminism, the biggest things that they have: the woman's right to choose, which is abortion.
Yeah.
And then the sexual liberation. These are the two pillars of feminism.
Exactly.
You know what the fertility goddess, the fertility cult, and the Baal worship was? Sexual immorality and killing of children.
Yeah.
That was literally what it was.
That's Baal and
that is where God was like to kill them. Because ultimately, that sexual immorality would always lead unrestrained to pedophilia.
Yes, I think you're right. The fact that you control people through their emotion, and this, in a sense, you have a direct link between the sexual revolution or the sexual manipulation. A man and a woman. We can go now and check what is happening with young men and young women. Young women now are complaining that men are not gallant anymore. They're not trying to engage in a relationship or even a conversation. Women have and they say, why you don't make the first step? And wait a second. Every time they try, they are rebuked, because women have become extremely masculine in their way. You can just look in where they go to the gym. Women, they train more harder than men. You think it feels to a man to see a woman that is double his size in terms of muscle? You say, okay, and then you arrive in the street fight, and you say to your girlfriend, "Go defend me." she will not. And you have some. I have a small anecdote. I had a girlfriend many years ago, and she was doing judo for 10 years. And one day we were playing, and she said, "Let's go outside. I will show you some judo trick." So I said, "Okay." She tried the first one. She was quite strong. I took her and I blocked her, and that was it. She said, "How did you do this? You never did judo in your life." I said, "You don't know, man. You don't know what it is. Men, if they are threatened, they will fight to kill. This is not complicated to understand. If you're in a rat in a corner, if you're not castrated, you will fight to kill. This is the nature of men."
Yeah. Yeah, this is the lie that they sell women all the time, because I know a lot of women that will say, "Oh, I train all this fighting, I can defend myself." I'm like, look, this is not the propaganda from the movies where you're going to see Scarlett Johansson beating up 10 spies. Okay, like male spies who are bigger than her and taking down the Hulk. This is not what this is. It doesn't matter how much, I tell women all the time, no matter how much physical strength or training you think you have, no matter how much natural muscle or how much you learn, the best defense a woman has is respect. Respect and prevention. Respect for God, their father, and their husband, and then prevention. Because if you, the women, as soon as you train them to take a physical approach, this is the worst thing you can do to a woman, because a woman should never in her mind think that she should take a physical approach to a man. This is set her up for death.
I'm going to pull up a quote, not a quote here, but a clip here. Since we were talking and mentioning this girl, her name is Alicia Gross. She used to be a porn star. This woman had a rough life. She was put into child porn. She was abused and stuff like this. But this is what she watched and notices from her experience in this whole situation. And people need to pay attention to this, because when she says, I was like, and she notices this, and other people that were in those situations, they notice it too.
You know, 40 years ago when they had porn magazines.
Playboys.
Yeah, magazines that were just naked women who were like of age and
Rest
looked
in peace,
of
Hugh
age.
Hefner.
Yeah, and it's like at some point we lost the ability to jerk off to like a grown woman, and so now we need a girl with braces who looks like she's 12.
Bold of you to know what I can jerk off to.
And you want to see the numbers of what sells. Nobody wants to see two grown-ups that aren't related have sex. Let me tell you.
That's kind of...
It is what it is.
It's a reflection of needing to up the ante.
Yeah, so this is the thing. Like, what I've tried to tell people this, like, my whole career, because I learned it myself really early on, that, like, I have to, reset. You know, like, you can't just watch weirder and weirder and weirder shit. At some point, there's a line where you're gonna cross a line, you know, and into something that's illegal or something that's, like, horribly wrong. You know, and so, but people...
Forgive me, can you elaborate on what it is that you're saying? Because some people might be listening to this and go, what are you talking about?
Yeah, so some, maybe, like, people start off watching, like, a girl video. And, like, that's enough for them. And then all of a sudden that's enough. Now they need, like, a boy-girl. Now they want to watch a gangbang. Now they want to watch, like, a scene. Now they want to watch, like, whatever. The only thing that leads to eventually is kids and animals. You know, or, like, violent, like, things that are real. You know,
it gets to the point where, like, now these acts are illegal by our society.
Right. And morally incorrect. And I think that the industry... Yes, I think that the industry pushes that boundary very, very, very closely.
On purpose or by accident?
Absolutely on purpose.
On purpose.
They put these, like, man, when I came back to the industry, like, after I had quit for a couple years, they had, like, this guy, I don't even remember his name, I wouldn't say it, but he looked like he was, like, 8 with Down syndrome. And, like, and he was, like, one of the major, like, Brazzers stars, and, like, they put him in a little backpack, and I'm like, dude, this is, like...
It's awkward
legal
for you.
This is legal pedophilia, and anybody who works with that kid, he was 27, but he looked like he was a child. And I'm like, anybody who works with that person, like,
So they were going for a specific look.
Oh, yeah, and they do that a lot. It's usually, a lot of it's the other way around. They want the girls that look super young and with their daddy or whatever. And, like, so I did plenty of those scenes, but I didn't
Forgive me, when we say super young... Because the majority
they're illegal, yes. They're the girls who actually work in my industry, my old industry, they're legal. There is also a bunch of shit that's not legal, that's not our industry. It's just illegally made shit of underage women that are all over porno. And so, either way,
I didn't know any of this either.
It's terrible. It's so bad. But they got in a lot of trouble recently. I had to delete like
Pornhub,
all of them.
the companies,
Pornhub
everybody.
is-
You get the point, but that is this is the end result of things like what Gerda Lerner was talking about, and she references the liberation. I'm going to see if I can find that quickly, but she literally references the liberation of women to the sexuality of the fertility goddess, and ties it directly to the snake, to Lucifer, the devil. Right? What that woman talking about, that's where it ended. This is why God was like, kill them all. Because that was their society, was raping and killing kids.
Yep.
Well, there's one thing you mentioned, Dale. There's no end, and in the clip we see it. There's no end to hubris, human hubris.
Yep.
And you can never stop. And you always, what happened when you commit something that is immoral? You will try to rationalize it, try to make it normal. So you shift, the concept of the Overton window. You shift it slowly so people start to agree. For example, take pedophilia. Now, some people, they say it's sexual preference. What is this type of behavior? Because when you are in a relationship with a child, this is child abuse. And the language is shifting slowly, so people start to accept something that is totally immoral. That's the first point. The second point is most people who are in, for example, are in the porn industry, they are stuck in a narrative, and like she said in the video, they have to perform more and more violent and degraded form of intercourse because it doesn't suit them anymore. But that's not new. It was arriving in 1915, 1920. It started, and because they were pushing the narrative. And you have some, I can refer to the Marquis de Sade. The Marquis de Sade his literature is based on that, pushing the boundaries of what is morally acceptable or unacceptable. And it is a long path of, I would say, decadence for the Western civilization.
Yes, and I'm not going to sit down and say that the average feminist is like this, but the people that are pushing this, that has this in their mind, they have a full understanding of what they're doing.
Yeah.
Of course.
And a lot of these people, a lot of these women, they were sexually very deviant in ways that people today would just be like, what?
Yeah.
And the men they were around were just as nasty. And they used women to do things that men would never be able to do. Because when you look at the way that they frame toxic masculinity, who does it attack? The protective males. You look at the way that they're breaking down the protective males, and who is running rampant in society? The predators. And they're getting the protection of the state.
Yep.
Well, you mentioned the male, the protector, and we can see it, the government is attacking the protector through this type of manipulation. Because if you want to invade a country, do not make war. Do not make war. Just you can pervert people and it will work. In 2002, when there was the attack between the Palestinians in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip, and the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, when they were able to take control of the media in the Gaza Strip, and the first thing they did, they broadcast porn in the Gaza Strip, because they want to pervert the mind of people, and it works. It worked in Germany. It works in Gaza. Every time they need something, they will try to pervert the idea. Now in the Ukraine war, there's the business of prostitution is skyrocketing. because people, they are on drug, on fentanyl, and they cannot support the burden of being killed maybe in the next hour, and so they are constantly on porn. And this industry is so evil that people get used to it, and slowly they fall. One, like she said in the clip, you watch one video and then it's not enough, and you just go deeper and deeper, and you can never get out.
They did a study here in the province of Alberta. They said 98% of students, children before the age of 18, was exposed to pornography.
Wasn't it by like the age of 12 or something?
1/3 of those were before the age of 11. They were 10 and younger. You put a 6 to 10-year-old child in front of pornography, and you have just destroyed them, because they have no frontal lobes. Like the judgment centers are completely underdeveloped. They're underdeveloped in a teenager, but at that prepubescent stage, at that age, they have none, and they're going to become just compulsive to that. And then by the time they're in their teens, they're watching the more violent stuff to get the same rush, or the more deviant stuff, and you've set them down on a path for destruction. And when you look at how this is being pushed on different forms of social media that the kids are accessing, or then you go in Canada has no age verification or for restriction or any control. Like, any kid can just go, if you're lucky, maybe click a button, say, are you 18? A lot of the times they can just go and access this stuff. And then what they're doing in the schools, what are they doing to the kids? They're teaching them to distrust their parents, and all of this stuff. They're grooming them. They're preparing for exploitation.
The literature in primary school, it's obvious everywhere in Canada, and I think it is in Alberta. They were trying to remove classical literature and replace it with very, very devious literature that is written by feminism. You mentioned something important. Many feminist women, they're manipulated. They're not even aware of what they're doing.
Yep. It's because they put them what's in front of their face. Go ahead, Peyman.
Finish your thought. Finish your thought.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, to your point, it's because they put to the women what's in front of their face, whatever they want. Like, maybe if it's about the abuse, if it's the abortion, if it's the sexuality, they manipulate them to make them feel good with their point, and then they continue, but they don't see the consequence until it's too late. They don't understand the circumstance of that. But yeah, go ahead, Peyman.
I don't think they understand the consequence ever. Let me. You're pointing out the second point I wanted to make. Like, you go through the public education system, and the things that they make people believe, like this concept that prostitution is somehow female empowerment. They say it, and the people that say it believe it, and the people that hear it believe it. And then you go home and you're like, that can't possibly be right. Like, how is that female empowerment? The other thing I wanted to make, the point I wanted to make, is what André was pointing out. I think all of this has to do with the breakup of the family unit, because the family unit is a decentralized form of governance with the father is the protector and the mother is technically the producer of the children. So if you can undermine the father, you break up the family unit, and the women, they kind of gravitate to this gravity well, which is the state. Oh, you no longer have a strong alpha male to protect you? Come to me, daddy, state, and we'll protect you, the family court system and policing. Right. And it's almost to the point where the law enforcement in the West is so big, it's like a paramilitary force, where you could make the argument, why do we need men? Like, why would you need a man to defend you? Just call 911.
Well, it's the women. Women are free agents of the state, because if you're not going to submit to the authority of a father and a future husband, you submit to the authority of the state. And when the state tells you to do something because they're your daddy or they're your husband, then you're going to do what it tells you to do. The women in society that do feminism are like police agents and NPCs and matrix agents for the state because they go around doing the most egregious evil. Women, I will say, women, they kill more than anyone on the planet, including criminals. Like women from abortion, the WHO said that worldwide women commit more murder technically, like because of the abortion numbers.
There's another one. I mentioned prostitution is female empowerment. They've also convinced them that abortion is female empowerment. They don't phrase it that way. They say my body, my choice. But these are really weird things. Imagine if for men, like you said that getting a vasectomy is like female empowerment. Like what? I don't want. How is that male empowerment?
Women, it's not. But women, when they do the feminism, what's dangerous about this is because they don't realize how much crime they're committing, how many acts of egregious evil they're committing, like the abortion, killing their own children and cutting off their lineage, making it easy for immigrants to come in and replace families because we're depleting and they want the numbers to come up. They don't realize the consequences of that long term. They don't realize when they decide to listen to the state over the man, they're actually using the state as a physical force and a threat against a good man in society so that more predators can run free and have power over the good men and destroy them, and then come and continue to do the filth against them that they are scared of the good men doing, which is the rape, the pillage, the murder, the crimes, and all the other stuff. Women cause more human trafficking, more rape, more crime, more murder currently than anyone on the planet because of feminist ideology, and they use the state to suppress the good men so that it can continue. Women, and then they don't understand consequences or circumstances the way men do, or danger the same way, so then they put their children in situations for them to be raped and murdered or trafficked or whatever. And women are more likely to sell their children into this stuff because when they don't have men, they have little solutions, and they turn to egregious things.
This now I got some of the stuff here up from Gerda Lerner that I wanted to talk about, because this woman, the patriarchy, whenever you hear them talk about the patriarchy, they're referring to this woman's book. She did the Creation of the Patriarchy, and she is full of where you're talking about this. Something is definitely wrong with the way this woman is thinking, because she's like championing this, but painting it in the very best light and framing men as the oppressor, and this is the path to freedom. So she says the curse of Eve makes her sexuality subordinate to her husband. This is the condition essential to monotheism. It is the historic moment of the death of the mother goddess and her replacement by God the Father. Again, framing it as oppressive, the mother goddess, which this whole deviant behavior, this is liberation. But being faithful to your husband, this is wrong.
Yeah.
This is slavery. This is what this is putting in people's minds.
Yeah.
Right? Men are the boundary setters, right? And so forth. And, she goes in and keeps going to this. I'm going to get to the one quote here where she actually just straight up says this. Well, there you go. I mean, she's talking about restraining female sexuality and talking about the fertility goddess again. But here it is. Where is it? Here. Right here. To the question, who brought sin and death into the world? Genesis answers, woman in her alliance with the snake, which it stands for free female sexuality. It is quite in line with such thinking that women should be excluded from active participation in the covenant community, and that the very symbol of that community and compact with God should be a male symbol. They're saying the worst elements of woman should be able to run free. That's like saying the worst elements of men should be able to rule over us.
That's it. Yeah, it implies that, and I was referring to Dionysos yesterday, earlier, and the Bacchant, the fact that free female sexuality. Freedom cannot be total. Albert Camus, in one of his books, the Insurrection Man, he said, and I quote, he said, if everything is possible, murder is possible. It means that you cannot have a society based only on free sexuality or freedom of everything. It cannot work. It will never work.
Right. And the reason a lot of women who have this mentality, it goes back to what Peyman was just asking about, this being women's liberation, like the prostitution, pornography, and, the abortion. The only women that become almost obsessed with sexuality and a fear of having children to this degree are women who are rape victims, like sexually abused or physically abused to some high degree in their home, or, they've had some extremely traumatizing experience. Because I explain all the time, when women, I don't know what it's like for men, but when women are abused, especially sexually abused, they have because women are stuck in emotions and women think emotionally, men can compartmentalize. Imagine 1,000 light bulbs on the tree, 999 go out. The man is running on one light bulb and it's still working. Women, exactly. One bulb goes out, they all go out. And that's what happens when women get sexually abused too. They live in the state of emotion. So as long as that emotion protrudes and they don't get relief, that visual of what happened will play over and over in their head like a film. So then they're like, I need to go out and have sex with other people to replace the bad memory with good memories. It is the solution, it's the outcome, but the avenue by which they get there is wrong. They need to have an actual husband that loves them and a proper relationship and courtship, but they don't know how to do that. So they come up with these solutions and do this stuff. And then they get scared of having children because of what they experience. They don't have the solution or the boundaries to prevent themselves of thinking that they will do the same thing in some capacity to their children.
I just want to draw this connection as with these slides, and then we can continue the discussion. She ties the serpent and the female sexuality at the fertility goddess. This is what Gerda Lerner says. Now, this is Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan. He says, Satan represents opposition to all religions which serve to frustrate and condemn man for his natural instincts. He has been given an evil role simply because he represents the carnal, earthly, and mundane aspects of life. And then he goes in and says, Astaroth, the Phoenician goddess of lasciviousness, equivalent of the Babylonian Ishtar, Azazel, taught men to make weapons of war, introduced cosmetics, Balberith, Canaanite lord of the covenant, who was later made a devil, Balaam, Hebrew devil of avarice and greed, Baphomet, worshipped by the Templars as a symbol of Satan, Bast, Egyptian goddess of pleasure, represented by the cat, Beelzebub, Hebrew lord of the flies, taken from symbolism of the scarab behemoth, the Hebrew personification of Satan in the form of an elephant, Berit, Syriac name for Satan, Hecate, Greek goddess of the underworld and witchcraft, Ishtar, Babylonian goddess of fertility, and so forth. You're seeing this being repeated over and over again, right? This is what they're doing. And they tied it to Loki and all this sort of stuff. So this is what Gerda Lerner is tying to the female liberation. The devil, fertility goddess, like the worst forms of unrestrained human carnality without restraint. But even Anton LaVey will say not to go this far to doing this, but there's no restraint
for women,
because women are not the boundary setters. Men are. Because men are the ones.
These people are.
What? What?
People are psychotic.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like they're speaking a different language. But maybe we should wrap it up pretty soon. André and I are in the Eastern time, but I just want to go back to what I was saying about how these people are just bitter and they have a grievance with something. Maybe they were abused, and they're tilting the axis of the entire universe to fit their worldview. It's like I went to the dentist the other day, and the level of pain they put me under, it was excruciating. And then imagine if I came home and I created a new philosophy of a world without teeth and teeth of the like dentists, like they're I don't know, they have in their minds, this is what they mean when they say oppressor and oppressed, but the manifestation of that is they find somebody they think is the source of their problems, and they figure the world has to revolve around the absence of that somebody.
Exactly. They're psychotic. They are. There's this, but these are the people. When you listen to what they say, this is what they're doing, and they don't sell it this way. They don't tell people the truth.
Yes.
Because if people understood that this is what they stand for, who's going to want to stand for people who kill children and are pedophiles?
Yes.
Exactly.
Nobody.
This is what Gerda Lerner was championing for.
Yeah.
Well, Kaysha mentioned something important. Rationalizing the trauma is one thing. The fact that the person, for example, will say, let's say, my name is André, and if I say I go to the supermarket, but if I talk to Kaysha, I say, oh, André went to the supermarket. I use the third person because it is too painful to use I. And most people who are aggressive pay attention to how they speak. They speak about themselves at the third person because the trauma is too dangerous to face. And then after that, they try to rationalize and they have problem. Let's say a woman is raped. She will always fear, it's too bad. She will always fear men. And those women are so fragile that after that, they can be manipulated. And I've met many women who were in this situation. Because they're like this, they become real feminists. They become people who are practically warriors because they have reason, let's say, to hate a man who raped her. They do have a reason.
Yes.
Rape is an aggression, but they cannot process it. And through, I would say, through therapy and psychology, the first thing you do with a person who's aggressive, you try to reassure the person, saying that you're the victim, you're not the aggressor. You have to get but many people, they cannot because society failed them. They fail them often. They leave them alone, and some of the women they take advantage of that. I think about this woman who accused Donald Trump of aggressing her, and she brought Donald Trump in court. I don't want to judge the event, but the idea is many people they play the victim. Some play the victim, some are real victim, and it's very difficult to distinguish one from the other.
Well,
no, go ahead.
Well, the thing I think it's very clear to me when someone is a genuine victim, like I said, of being raped, because they're going to have a certain disposition and approach to things, and like I said, they are apprehensive about certain relationships, and they approach things a different way because they're trying to solve things by themselves. They will go and sleep around with people and create new sexual memories to try and cover up the trauma. But those women also a lot of times don't have fathers that help give them boundaries and solutions. A lot of those women will go and do things by themselves because they don't have good relationships with men in their family to teach them. And they equate men who hurt their feelings as men who are rapists. But the men that care about you in your life, your father, your future husband, he's going to hurt your feelings sometimes because you need to feel bad to grow. If you go to the gym and you're overweight, you're going to feel bad when you work out. You're going to feel bad when you eat healthy food sometimes, but you have no choice. You need to suffer that pain to get healthy. The women, they don't understand that, so they do those things. And unfortunately, those women who become warriors a lot of times become predators themselves. And the reason why a lot of men don't allow them to get the help they need, and what people don't want to actually address, is that when someone rapes somebody as a child or as an adult, they've taught that person that behavior is okay, that the rape, to be a rapist and to rape, to be raped and to be a rapist. And unless that person gets help, they adapt rapist and pedophile ideology and behaviors unknowingly.
Behavior.
This yes, this is why predators always say they go for children who have no father in the home, no God, and friends just like them. Because when he rapes the children, they'll go and groom their friends because that's the behavior they learned and they don't know any better. The women who are feminists, they do this more than anyone else.
And I want to make this clear because I know we got to wrap up here. I'm not sitting down and saying that the average feminist is like this or any of that kind of stuff. I have sympathy for people in situations because they don't know better. Even the people that are in pornography, a lot of them were in horrendous situations and so forth. And people are creating the circumstances for them to be in those situations.
Yes.
It's the people like you see on these slides that they come from lifestyles that the average person does not.
Yeah.
And that they're imposing their will on these people. These people need to get the full consequences because they are doing things and they're taking advantage of people in situations.
They're exploiting
to
them.
do things to push their power up that those average people will never see in the light of day.
Right.
And they're manipulating the hell out of them and getting them to unconsciously do things to put further their agenda.
Yes.
Most people who are going to become feminists are not going to become pedophiles, but some of them will.
Oh, yeah.
That's and
it's
more
when
and
the
more
victim
of them
becomes
are
the
going to
perpetrator.
become that way as they break down the men. But it comes to a certain point. You can only do this to people for so long, and they're going to snap.
Exactly.
But they want people to snap so they can come in and do even worse things to us. And this is why we need to have calmer heads prevailing right now. This is these people, like you said, Peyman, they're sick.
Yeah.
There's something definitely wrong with them. They're not wired the way an average human being is. Because this kind of thinking, it's not rational.
No, it's not.
It is not at all. So, any final thoughts before we wrap this up, guys?
Andre?
Mr. Askari, go ahead.
What happened to age before beauty? Thank you very much for having me. It was a really fun episode, and I learned a lot about feminism. Now I know why they're so annoying. So thanks.
You want to tell people they can reach you and so forth?
Sure. On X, I am at Peyman Askari 451. My podcast is In Lay Terms. I got some videos. Tuesdays, I do a podcast, The Philosopher, The Stoic, and The Teddy Bear. Fridays, I do a podcast, Behind the Wall. And Saturdays with André, Meloche, Tim Knight, we do Cerberus at the Improv.
All right, thank you.
He's a very busy man, Mr. Askari. First of all, it was a pleasure to meet you, to meet you, Kaysha, and to see you again, Dale. It was a very interesting discussion, and I would like to make like you say, a clear distinction between femininity and feminism. I think it is very important. Men and women are complementary. Women are beautiful. Men are strong. We both have extraordinary potential. Let's just work together, live together, love each other, and try to see through the propaganda that we are bombed with every day. So thanks for inviting me.
And I agree with that. Like, we can't fix this situation unless we work together.
Yes.
We are far better when men and women work together than when we are at each other's throats.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the only way we're going to go forward. Like, all of these isms, they just need to go away. Let's sit down at the table and talk and figure things out. Instead of one trying to get power over the other, and let's go fight this situation where we're best suited to win.
Yeah.
Because we need women. The reason that women not doing their jobs is why our society is the way it is.
Yeah.
Women are critical to humanity progressing, and it can't progress. And this is where we need to give them the respect for doing those jobs and honoring them for doing those jobs where they have it. And had men fallen off and did wrong? Absolutely. So men have to do better as well. but we can't get the government to give their solutions, or these elites who never have the issues that we have to face to give their insane solutions. Right? We need to figure it out ourselves. Like, don't listen to these people. That's all I got to say. Right? I'll close here with a prayer, because we can use some, especially when these people are trying to teach us. And I'll give my daughter her final thoughts before we close here. All right. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, your grace, your mercy, and Lord, we thank you for the lessons that people have learned here today, and help people that they would understand these discussions, and that the men and the women would come together to fix this situation and work together instead of bringing the war in the home. Take the war to these criminals who are trying to destroy our family, and especially to destroy our children and our way of life, is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks, Dad, for the prayer. As always, thank you, André and Peyman, for joining us. We hope that we will have you again soon. Like you guys said, there is beauty between men and women when they work together. God made us for that. We are not equal. We are different. We are valuable in our own way, and we need to accept that. I understand the pain and suffering as someone who's been through trafficking and domestic violence and, sexual abuse and all these things. Like, it's not a reason. Your emotional pain and suffering, like Peyman said, just because the dentist put me through pain doesn't mean I should go and advocate everyone for being toothless, like having no teeth. You have to be rational and understand that it is good men in society that will protect us, and good women in support of them that is going to bring the best out of society. And until we start doing that, we're not going to see the things that we need in society, or get the things that we need for our families and our communities. And that's just really the end of it. It sucks. It's not fair, but that's the way that things have to be. And the more you try to separate yourself from good men in society, the harder your life is going to be, and the more you're going to be in the place of suffering the things that you're trying to run from. So anyways, guys, I hope you learned something. We'll catch you in the next one. And to my dearest Karis, until we meet again.